Okay, I have never heard this song before, ever. I just checked it to make sure it would work for this, but I've never applied the guitar to it. So I'll show you how quickly you can find the key here. It's in D major. Hey there, welcome back to the channel. My name is Andrew Clarke, and in this video, I'm gonna show you a guaranteed way to find the key of any song by ear in just 3 steps. Every single song is in a key, and all a key is it's our way of organizing notes. And to get those organized notes, we use a pattern called the major scale. If you don't know what the major scale is, a lot of people are taught it as do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And our very first step for finding the key of a song has to do with the major scale. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna show you a very simple major scale pattern. And there are 2 ways you can do this. You can learn a major scale down on the lower strings, that pattern right there, or you can learn one up on the higher strings. And what I like to do is use the one on the higher strings because eventually we are gonna be applying this scale on top of an actual song. And I find that the lower notes, they kind of blend in and muddy up a little too much with like the bass and the chords that are happening in the song. With the higher strings, it kind of sticks out more. It's easier to kind of differentiate. So our pattern is gonna look like this. So we're starting on the G string, and let's do one from the 5th fret. So we've got the 5th fret here, 7th fret, 5th fret on the B string, 6th fret on the B string, 8th fret on the B string, then we go up again, 5th fret on the high E string, 7th fret on the high E string, and then 8th fret on the high E string. Now that right there was a C major scale. And the reason why I know it's a C major scale is because this note, the one I started on, is a C note. Now you might not know that, that's totally okay. And the note that I ended on is also a C note. Now it's not required, but it can be very, very helpful to at least know the note names on your high E string, which is the same note names as the low E string, obviously. It just makes this process a little bit faster for identifying, because when I play up that scale, I'm looking at the note I ended on, and I would know, because this is E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C. So then I would know that is a C major scale. Now the cool thing about guitar is that I can move that scale shape up and down the fretboard, and all of a sudden I'm playing different major scales. So instead of playing it like here, if I played it here or here, those are all major scales as well. They would just be different major scales. So instead of a C major scale, that second one I played here, that's a D note, D major scale. If I played it up here on the 9th fret, that last note that I'm ending on is an E note. So that is an E major scale. I'm sure you kind of get the idea. You do not have to be able to play this scale quickly, by the way. This is something that you can play through slow. Don't worry about getting it up to speed or anything. That's not what we're gonna be using it for. So here's the fun part. What we're gonna do is I'm gonna put on a song, okay? And we are going to play our major scale over that song. And you're probably thinking, well, how is it supposed to be in the right position? That's where you have to start using your ear. Now, the other method for finding the key of a song has to do with finding the tonal center and really focusing on using your ear and locating it on the low strings. I find this to actually be a little easier to pick up, even though it's maybe a bit more tedious to start. I'll show you an example at the end of how quick this method can actually be once you get the hang of it. But what we are gonna do is we are gonna take that major scale shape, and as we're listening to the song, listening to the vocals and the bass and the chords that the guitar is playing, piano, whatever. There doesn't even have to be any guitar in it, by the way. We are going to play that major scale, and we are going to move it up and down the fretboard. So things like we are going to move it up and down until we find a place where it sounds good. And I promise you, unless you're listening to some crazy music, it is going to sound good in one position. So let's get into example number 1. Okay, so we start by just listening, getting an idea of what the song sounds like. Not much going on yet. Now we could start this process right now, but I'm just gonna wait for more of the band to come in. Okay, so here's our song. Let's start playing through the scale. Now to me, it sounds like every single note there sounds like it's from the same key, right? If I was in a different position, there's always going to be one that doesn't quite fit or more, but this one, okay, so we did step one. We applied our scale, we moved it around the fretboard until we found a place that it fit. Step two is naming that scale. And I didn't do it while we were listening to it, but this is the scale that fit over top, right? And that major scale is an E major scale because that note that I ended on is an E note. So because the E major scale was the major scale that fit over this song, that means that this song is in the key of E major. Okay, so you might be thinking, well, that was only 2 steps. We only did step 1, which was to apply the scale, and then step 2, which was to name that scale, which gave us the key of the song, right? Well, step 3 is one small adjustment that we need to make, and that is just to decide whether this song is in a major key or a minor key. So we call this finding the tonal center. Now, this isn't as simple as saying, well, this song is in the key of E major or E minor. It actually has to do with something called relative major and minor scales. Don't get intimidated. It is very, very simple. All it means is when I play a major scale, right, an E major scale, right, we know that that fit over that song. Well, the relative minor scale requires us to play the exact same scale, okay, all the same notes, exactly the same notes, but we're starting from a different point. So instead of starting on the first note, we have to start on the 6th note, okay? So in our case, we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, this is a C sharp note. And I'm just gonna make an adjustment to the shape. You are not gonna need to do this. You're not gonna need to use another shape. This is just to illustrate the difference between the two, okay? If I started and played an E major scale, starting on the C sharp, so all the same notes. Okay, that would give me my relative minor scale and my relative minor key. So what that means is the key of E major is the exact same key and has the exact same notes as its relative minor key, which is C sharp minor. Now, how do you know if this song is in the key of E major or C sharp minor? It just has to do with where it feels like the song and the chords and the melody are pulling you towards. It's basically where it feels like the song is going to resolve. That is our tonal center. So in this case, listening to this song, I would say it felt like it wanted to resolve on that E major chord, the 1 chord, we're in the key of E major, right? It felt like it was going to resolve there. If it felt like it was more of a minory feel, more of a sad feeling chord progression, you could very easily say that it was in the key of C sharp minor. In both cases, they use all the same notes, they contain all the same chords. It's not really going to matter that much. And ultimately, a lot of times when you're talking about whether it's major or minor, it can be a little bit subjective, depending on the musician and what they feel. And also it can change a little bit throughout the song. One chord progression, the verse of a song might feel more minory, so you would say it is in that minor key. And then when you go to the chorus, maybe it's more uplifting, more majory, you would say that it is in a major key. So let me show you one more example of a song that is in a minor key. Okay, so right away we can start applying our major scale. Even though it's in a minor key, major scale. My ear is telling me that that is the right major scale. So again, E major scale, right? However, this has way more of a minory feel, right? That's a very minory feel. Very minory. So what that means is I keep playing a C sharp minor chord over that, by the way, that's what that is. So even though that second example was technically in the same key, we got the same major scale, because it very clearly had a more minery feel, it felt like it wanted to resolve on that sixth note, which is the C sharp. That means that we can confidently say that that song is in the key of C sharp minor. The same would go for a song in any other key. If we had landed in, let's say, a song that was in the key of C major, right? Let's say that was the scale that sounded good to us. Well, our relative minor key of C major is A minor. And that's because that is the sixth note of the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That note right there is an A, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A. So that would be our relative minor. So if the song had a more minery feel, then we would say it's in the key of A minor. So to recap, step 1 is to apply the scale, step 2 is to name the scale, and then step 3 is to find your tonal center. Now the very last thing I want to do is I just want to show you how this method works when it's taken all the way to the extreme, because right now it probably feels really slow, right? You got to work your way up every single position of that major scale. However, when you start getting really comfortable with your instrument and doing this, being able to listen and hear which notes fit and which ones don't, you're actually going to be able to play 1 or 2 notes anywhere on the fretboard, and you'll be able to just fall into the key very, very, very quickly, just because you can hear how that note, whether it's right or wrong, relates to the music that you're listening to. And if you have a good amount of fretboard understanding and you know where all of these scales kind of sit all over the fretboard, it makes it lightning fast. Okay, I have never heard this song before, ever. I just checked it to make sure it would work for this, but I've never applied the guitar to it. So I'll show you how quickly you can find the key here. It's in D major. So congratulations, you now know how to find the key of just about any song. Now, as far as next steps, you kind of have 2 paths you can go down. One of those is to use this method to help you find the chords, identify all the chords in a song by ear. And then the other one is to learn how to improvise guitar solos, essentially make up solos on the fly, being able to use your ear to do so. I've got great videos on both of those that'll get you started off on the right track. They'll be up on the screen for you right now. So I'd recommend checking out one of those. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.